welcome to the Three Inning Fan Show with me, Kelley Franco. I have with me today one of the most respected journalists in baseball. Jack Curry has a long tenure in the game. He was the Yankees beat reporter for the New York Times, then he was their national baseball correspondent, and currently you see him every night on the Yes Network as a baseball analyst. Jack, thank you so much for joining me today.
Kelley, it's my pleasure to join you. Looking forward to this baseball conversation that I know is going to veer in other directions as well. So I'm ready for it.
Well, one of my favorite things about meeting people in baseball is getting to know them, maybe a little bit beyond what we see on the television screen. But I definitely want to talk some baseball with you. So tell me, have the Yankees turned a corner? We saw a little bit of a sign of life this week, but I don't know where it's going from here.
It's a great question, Kelley. And when you look at the way they've played for the last 2 months, they should feel fortunate that they're still clinging to a wild card position as you and I tape this. I think it is all about consistency in baseball, and the Yankees have not been a consistent team for a long period of time. They need to take advantage of where they are in their schedule right now. They have a big 4 game series coming up with the Red Sox in about a week, but you have three with St. Louis, two with Tampa Bay. I know there was some competitive pitching matchups in there, but I think from a Yankee perspective, you have to look at those games as games that you have to win. That's why I found the loss to the Twins in the final game of that series disconcerting for the Yankees. Yes, Joe Ryan was terrific, but they were even with Joe Ryan for about 5 or 6 innings. And if you're able to do that, you've got to figure out a way to win that game. So that was a dispiriting loss, but there's still a lot of baseball left, and there's still time for them to assert themselves. And once you get to the postseason, perhaps make some noise.
Yeah, I think they really have to capitalize on the schedule for the next 3 weeks or so. But that 4 game series against the Red Sox at the stadium really stands out as something I think that they need to make a statement with.
I agree with you, and it's interesting. There have been people, even this year, who said that Yankees Red Sox has lost its juice. Well, there will be a lot of energy for that series because the Blue Jays are holding on to first place right now, and we don't know if anyone's going to hunt down the Blue Jays. So the Yankees and the Red Sox jockeying not just for a position in a wild card spot, but for a wild card spot because the Mariners are atop that right now. Cleveland is right behind the Yankees. So I am very much looking forward to that 4 game series. And I just think you look at the way the Yankees are assembled right now, and their pitching has really struggled. The top of their rotation and Fried and Rodon, Kelley, those pitchers have to really dominate the rest of the way. And then you look at Heel and Warren and Schlittler. And I actually think Warren has had a really strong rookie of season. This is his first full season. He should get some rookie of the year votes. Heel's second start was very encouraging. And I like Schlittler a lot. I know I'm not winning scout of the year by saying, well, the guy who throws 100, of course you like him a lot. But I think his secondary pitches are coming along, and I love his poise. It's 6 starts in the major leagues, but he looks as if someone who belongs out there.
I think so too. I think the young pitching has been substantial for the Yankees this year, especially with Heel, last year's rookie of the year, being hurt. And I think he's got tonight's start, right? Heel?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if he can return to old form, and I agree, first outing, not so good. Second outing, encouraging. So hopefully he can keep trending in the right direction. Maybe the pitching can turn it around. But let me ask you, even if the Yankees do make the postseason and they have the slimmest of leads, a half game over the Guardians, as we talked today, do they have a deep playoff run in them?
Here's the way here's the way I would answer that. When you play the regular season, we've all heard this cliche that the regular season is the marathon. Well, you get to the postseason and then it's a sprint. And if the Yankees are healthy, Kelley, I think they have set themselves up well in the postseason for this reason. You're going to get off days during the postseason. You're going to be able to really exploit your bullpen. And I think what they did at the deadline was impressive. I like the pitchers that they added. but they've also got Cruz on his way back. They've got Yarborough on his way back. And if you combine that with what they added at the deadline, I love Bednar. I think Bednar's their closer the rest of the way. I don't see him losing that job. And if he did lose it, the only pitcher I think who should be given that opportunity is Luke Weaver. I think that Devin Williams has shown there was a real chunk of time throughout this season where he was a solid closer, but I don't think at this point, with as many mishaps as he has had at the end of games, that you can rely on him to be your closer anymore. So my point is that once you get into the postseason, I think there will be teams who are playing the Yankees who are going to look at that bullpen and see four, five, six guys that Aaron Boone can go to. And in the games where Aaron Boone doesn't get 6 1/3 innings from Fried, for instance, suddenly he plays matchup, and I think that could work in the Yankees' favor. And I also think they're going to do that from a position player perspective. Again, if everyone's healthy, Paul Goldschmidt's probably not starting against a righty, but you bring a lefty in, who you bringing off the bench? You're bringing off Goldschmidt. So I think that the Yankees believe they set themselves up well. But as you said at the beginning of your question, you got to get in, and that's not a guarantee right now. They've got to play a lot better.
So true. And I am liking Bednar in the closing role, but isn't it interesting how these setup and closing roles are a lot more fluid now than they were like with the late 90s Yankee Dynasty team? I mean, we had Mariano closed, and he was amazing and completely spoiled Yankee fans. But then you had, like, a pretty steady depending on the year was, a pretty steady setup crew, it might have been well, in the early years, Mariano, of course, set up for Wetland, but then you had, Stanton and Nelson, Ramiro Mendoza, that one year was fantastic, and now it's, like, much more of a chess game, it seems.
Well, I think that goes back to starters not pitching deeper into games. So what happens if your starter doesn't give you as many outs? Suddenly your bullpen has to cover more of the game. I think the matchups that started, if you want to say it started with Tony La Russa or whatever manager started it, it became such a part of a managerial style that I'm going to win this matchup. I think Joe Torre, Kelly, and he's on the record saying this, he had his set bullpen, and he was a manager who also managed more by the gut. You don't see that as much anymore. If you're a manager, and this is not just Aaron Boone, this is any manager, probably before a game, let me use my prop here. You've probably got this in front of you before a game, and that's telling you that if you get to this part of your opponent's lineup in the seventh inning, here's the pitcher we expect you to use in that moment. So I do think there is some setup alignment in that position, but I do think you're right in that they expect more flexibility out of all of these relievers. There's not a set role. So I agree with you. I think pitchers are asked these days, relievers are asked to be more fluid. I mean, we saw Luke Weaver. He wasn't warming up as much as he was stretching, I believe, in the sixth inning the other night. And you think in your head, Luke Weaver is a late inning guy. But I also understand that if you think the biggest moment in the game is the sixth or seventh inning, it's probably the spot where you should use your high leverage and your best relievers. So the game has definitely changed, but I trace it back to starters not going as deep into games.
Yes, it's had such a profound impact on the game for sure. And with mention of the Yankee Dynasty team, I want to remind our listeners that Jack has a fantastic book about the 1998 Yankees. It's called The Inside Story of the Greatest Baseball Team Ever. This is not like a historical, kind of bunch of collection of facts. This is a book that is a riveting page turner. I got it admittedly because Jack was coming on my show, but I found that I just totally whipped through it. So, Jack, great book.
I appreciate that, Kelly. It's over my right shoulder right here.
There it is. Yeah.
I appreciate your kind words. I love the idea of writing that book, and I have an editor, Sean Desmond, who I have worked with. And when he proposed that idea, I couldn't rush to sign a contract fast enough because I knew all those players. I was around that team. And what my goal was in doing that book, and you just detailed part of it, I wasn't going to go week by week or even month by month. Sure, I was going to give you an evaluation and a recap of what happened in the season, but I wanted to take people inside the personalities of that season. And for instance, someone like Shane Spencer, who swooped in from AAA at the end of the year, and there was no room at the inn for a team that I believe was the best team of all time, suddenly forces his way into the lineup. But the story I like more than anything, Kelley, was when he first got called up. Now remember, this is 1998, pre 9/11. He had had his wallet stolen about a week or two earlier. So he had to get on a plane and rush to meet the Yankees on the West Coast. He didn't have a valid driver's license. He was with his girlfriend, who later became his wife, and he wasn't going to be able to get on the plane to make his debut with the Yankees. And his very smart partner, wife now, pulled out a baseball card and said, "This is him." And that's how he got on the plane to go be with the Yankees. So I would actually tell you there's probably another 40 or 50 stories like that in the book that I was proud to be able to tell, things that happened to that team that people didn't know. And in chapter 10, I lay out the case why I do think the 98 Yankees were the best team of all time. It's not just my opinion. It's a factually based argument.
One of the things that struck me most about the book, and maybe it's special for people our age who remember George Steinbrenner, is that you had a good relationship with the boss. And it doesn't seem like he was an easy man, but he was someone whose trust you earned. I mean, you earned his trust. How'd you do that?
I did, and the story that I always tell Kelley about George Steinbrenner, it goes back to the first time I ever interviewed him. It was trying to get him to allow me to interview him. I was a young writer at the New York Times, just started to cover the Yankees, 25, 26 years old, still living at home. I got married when I was 27, but I lived at home until then. So I lived in Jersey City with my mom and dad. It was a five-room apartment. We had one telephone. For those of your listeners who are of a certain age, we didn't have any of these. We
Right.
just had a telephone in the kitchen and then a telephone back in a little side room that I kind of used as an office. And I would call Steinbrenner every day. 813-281-9 dot dot dot. It was his shipbuilding company. And I would leave a message with the assistant every day. I would try and be more polite on a Thursday than I was on a Wednesday. I left messages for months. And then finally one day, someone, excuse me, someone with the Yankee organization called me and said, "Are you going to be home today?" I said, "Yes." They said, "You should probably be close to your phone. I think you're getting a phone call." They didn't have to say any more. I knew what to anticipate. George calls me. I say hello. And I found out subsequently he always does this. He didn't say hello. He just said, "This is George." And I said, "Oh, Mr. Steinbrenner, how are you? Thank you so much for returning my call." And he said, "I want to let you know something. I've had a rocky relationship with some other writers at the New York Times. Don't ever lie to me. If you don't ever lie to me, we can build a trust and I will return your phone calls. I've heard some good things about you. So what do you need?" So I started asking questions. 15, 20 minutes in, a reporter's antenna goes up. I said, "Oh my gosh." And Kelley, I don't even remember what he was telling me, but just the fact that I had him on the phone and he was talking was going to be a coup for me. Well, at a certain point, you hear a click on the phone and you hear a female voice say, "Doesn't anyone know there's a dinner hour around here?" And then the phone clicks. And George says, "What was that? Who was that?" Now remember, he said to me, "Don't ever lie to me." So I took a deep breath and I said, "George, that was my mom on the other extension of the phone. I think she wants me to come to dinner." And George says, I was waiting for him to explode. "She's right. Dinner time is important. Family time is important. Why are you talking to me?" And I said, "No, no, George, I still have more questions." "No, no, call me another time. It's more important that you have dinner with your family. I'll speak to you again." He hangs up. I walk out into the kitchen and I said, "Mom, what did you do? What are you doing?" And she said, "Well, dinner was ready." But Kelley, as mad as I was in that moment at my mother, in a long way to answer your question, she did me a favor because that's the first time I ever spoke to George, and it was over the phone, and he got a window into my world. I do believe for the rest of the time that I ever interviewed George, and some of those interviews were contentious, and sometimes he screamed at me, and sometimes he wasn't happy with what I wrote. I was always the kid at home whose mother wanted him to come to dinner. So I do believe that there was a soft spot that George had from that initial call, and I credit my mom for helping create that.
That is an amazing story and also a pretty hilarious story.
I
So,
I've told it many a time. I can't tell it enough. My mother was a passionate baseball fan. She left this world in 1994, but any opportunity to talk about her and to talk about her love of baseball and what she meant to me, I appreciate having the chance to do that on your podcast.
well, it's so interesting that you say that because I always say, and I think you and I probably had parents that were maybe the same age. The women of that generation knew baseball in
Yeah.
a way that I feel like my gal pals don't really want to watch the game as much now. But I mean, my mom, she knew baseball and her peers knew baseball. And when I've lectured to women of a certain age and I go in there thinking they're going to be kind of like a nice, sweet little old bunch of old ladies, and they give it back to me when I have an opinion on the game, I love it.
Yeah, my mother was born in 1939, so my dad was born in 1934. But I concur with you. My mother, I have one older brother. She saw her two boys loved baseball, and that became her passion as well. I wouldn't say she was a baseball fan growing up, but once she had two kids and they were nuts about baseball, she made sure that we were going to games and we had a batting glove and we had whatever equipment we needed. And my mom was a waitress and my dad was a mechanic slash truck driver. So paying an extra $30 for a glove or a pair of cleats wasn't always probably in their budget. But I I so am thankful that they saw, especially my passion. My brother moved into a different occupation. He's been an actuary his whole life, but I agree with you that the passion was there and the knowledge and the understanding of the sport was there.
Oh, I love it. That's really just a beautiful story about your parents. And I love the support that our parents give us over the years. And you're going to laugh because when I was young and I was such a baseball buff, my mother always used to say to me, I think you should be the first female sports writer for the New York Times.
Wow.
No,
That's a very that would a high goal to pursue, but I think where you landed was a very great place to land as well.
so you know a lot about the 1998 Yankees and you know a lot about the 2025 Yankees. How is the vibe different between those teams?
It's a great question, Kelly, and I do want to answer this in all transparency. In 98, I was in the clubhouse a lot more than I am in 2025 because I spend the majority of my time at the Yankee studio, at the Yes Network studio, I should say. I still make an effort to go to the clubhouse and get to know these players. And one of the things that has changed, and I'll answer your question, but one of the things that has changed in the reporter relationship, and I'll use a prop again, is a lot of the reporting is done on your phone now. I mean, there's a lot of texting and a lot of phone calls that occur. So that's one thing that I think has changed, and I don't think it's necessarily changed for the better. Whenever anyone says something to me along the lines of, "Hey, I like what you do on Yes," or "I like what you said on Yes," first of all, I'm deeply appreciative of that. But the second thing I say to them is, it's because of my reporter background. It's because I spent a lot of time in clubhouses. I covered hundreds of scenarios. So something that happens late in the game never impacts me. I'm ready to talk. So how is the vibe different? That 98 team, they won in 96, Kelly, and I have the numbers in my book. Now I know not every player from 96, 97 was there in 98, but I want to say two-thirds of them were. I want to say 15 or 16 of the guys who were there in 96 and 97 were still there in 98. They were aggravated by what happened in 97, losing in the playoffs. And they came out in 98 with a passion and an urgency. And after a slow start on the West Coast, they just went nuts. They went on a 64 and 16 run. I think they had players who believed in themselves. I think they had players who trusted themselves. Now, the 2025 Yankees, they lost in the World Series, and they lost in an aggravating fashion. Did they come out with the same urgency? Did they come out with the same energy? Again, we'll see. But the numbers tell you that the record wasn't the same and that they're still fighting for this playoff spot right now. So, can they avenge what happened in 24 the way that the 98 Yankees avenged what happened in 97? Let's see. I'm not saying they can't because I'm always reminded that it's a long season. It's a 162 game season. Who had the Nationals winning in 2019 when they were 19 and 31? Who had the Tigers even getting to the playoffs last year when it looked like they were sellers? So I think your question, I'll probably say it's a TBD. I'll have a more clear-cut answer when we get into October.
It's so true. It's amazing, even if you go back and look at the standings from 2 months ago, how different it is from the way the standings look today. And that's across both leagues, each division. It's different.
And I should also point out the 98 team was stacked. I if you go back and look at the stats that they accumulated in terms of run differential, all nine of their starters had OP on base percentages of 350 or better. So if we're comparing the 98 Yankees to the 25 Yankees right now, while the 25 Yankee stories is incomplete, that was a more complete team. That was a more talented team. Let's see where the 25 Yankees end up. Did the 98 Yankees have an Aaron Judge? No, they didn't. But position by position, that was a talent-laden team.
I loved the way they worked together on that team. It was like if one guy made a mistake, the rest of the team picked him up.
David Cohn told me something that I haven't heard a lot of players say about their team. And I will tell you, Kelly, that some might say it and not believe it. Coney said that we all knew our job and we did our job, but we trusted that our teammates knew their jobs and that they would do their job, and that gave us extra confidence. And you have to think about that. If you're a leadoff hitter, you're worried about your 4 or 5 at bats, and say if you were Knobloch or Jeter, you're worried about making the plays in the field. The relief pitcher comes into a game. Some players would say they're like this. They got their fingers crossed, hoping that they get the job done. I do believe that that team, as the season wore on and they were just manhandling opponents, that they almost started to feel a level of invincibility, and that confidence was at such a high level.
Amazing, magical, really, to think back on it. Now, one of the things that strikes me about you is that when I watch the Yes pregame show and the postgame show, is that you, and this compliment actually goes to Bob and Flash and Meredith, you guys don't waste any words. And so I'm sure our listeners are, tuned into that show anyway. But if they're not, you got to realize that in a half hour, you cover a tremendous amount of ground and there's kind of like there's no fluff. And that's one thing I really like about it.
I appreciate you saying that. A deep, dark little TV secret too, right? A half hour pregame show is really about 23 minutes because you have commercials. So you're already slicing into that half hour. When I was hired at Yes, John Filippelli was the man who hired me, and he gave me a great piece of advice. He said, I want you to take those 900 or 1,000 word articles that you used to write for the Times, take the 5 or 6 best points out of that article, boil that down to a 30 or 45-second soundbite, and that's how you will succeed on TV. And Kelly, I've taken that with me until this season, and this is my 16th season at Yes. I tried to make concise points. I tried to make informative points. I won't say like, or I have a way that I want to speak and a way that I want to get my point across. And I'm glad you mentioned some of my colleagues. I have great confidence and great symmetry with the people that I work with. And sure, we have a script. We call it a rundown. We have a script that we will go into a show with and saying, let's cover these points. But you mentioned Bob and Flash. Those are the two people I work with the most in the studio. Meredith is typically at the stadium. But I know Bob Lorenz off camera, say if Bob is talking to, or the camera is on Flash and he's making a point. If I just tap my finger on the desk or even just raise an eyebrow, Bob knows that I'm going to follow up. It's not in our rundown, but what Flash just said has alerted me to something that I want to say. So I'm very proud of the shows that we do, and I'm really happy with the people that I work with, including the people who you never see, the directors, the producers, the researchers. They all make us better at what we do.
Oh, it's like a little glimpse inside the Morse code of the Yes pregame show. I like it. I can see your roots as a journalist on the show because you stick to the facts and you never wildly speculate. And I kind of wondered if you ever felt like fans or, people on Twitter wanted you to wildly speculate. Do they get frustrated with you because you won't?
Of course they do. Of course they do. And I'll give you a little glimpse into that. And this might not be as accepted or as happily embraced by people in the world of social media. A few years back, I don't have the year in front of me. I could look it up as we're talking, but whatever the year was when Harper and Machado were free agents, I had done a lot of reporting leading into that offseason, and the vibe that I was getting from people around the Yankees was that they were probably not going to be big players for either one of those players. Now, you're not allowed to say that publicly. So I reported it exactly as I had just said to you, along the lines of Yankees have a big offseason ahead of them. The likelihood of them signing Machado or Harper is not high. Let's see how the offseason unfolds. And the vitriol and the criticism that I receive for reporting information that was accurate in the moment and ended up being accurate until today, it it's somewhat aggravating when you're doing someone a service and you're saying, "Here's what I'm hearing." And because it doesn't match the narrative that they want, that they kill the messenger. So I don't wildly speculate. I prefer to be a reporter who, when I have something and I know it for sure, I will report it. I have a ton of respect for the reporters who I will call the newsbreakers, and some of them are really good friends of mine. John Heyman and Joel Sherman, Jeff Passan of ESPN, Ken Rosenthal, and they will report a lot on transactions as they are unfolding. The Yankees have had conversations with these three teams about possibly doing this. I am more of the likelihood, Kelly, of I'm reporting on things, but I'm hanging on to my information. And I also want people to watch our shows. X and Twitter are great, but I would rather say 5 minutes before our pregame show, I've got an update on where the Yankees stand in free agent negotiations with the two players they like the most. Tune in later. So that's kind of where my head is at with that. I I don't want to be, I want to be right. Being first is great, but I also want to be right. And anytime I talk to young journalists, and I've had a couple of people say to me, I want to be the next Woj, I want to be the next Jeff Passan. And I said, being first is great. Being right is more important.
And I definitely sense that in your work. And you do have this very refined and knowledgeable way about you on Yes and everywhere we see you. But there's another side of you. And you're like a little bit, I was trying to find the words to describe you, but you're a little bit of a kind of a pop culture junkie. Can I say that?
Well, I'll take that.
Okay.
I I think it's more music related. I don't know that I could tell you every the top 10 shows on Netflix, although Pamela and I do we do watch a lot of Netflix. I don't know if I could tell you everybody that's been on the cover of People magazine, but in the music world, yes, I am a passionate music fan. I like all styles of music, and even if I don't like a certain style of music, Kelly, I'll try it. I have a nephew who has been in a few bands, and he's an accomplished guitarist, and he'll mention a band or two to me, and I'll say, all right, I'm gonna give him a try. And even if I don't like it, at least I've given it a shot and said, yeah, that really wasn't my cup of tea. So I appreciate you saying that because I think baseball is such a 24/7 life that within that 24/7, I've got to find a little place that isn't just demanding an opening comment, demanding analysis on this pitcher, having a thought on the way this game transpired. So the music gives me the opportunity to do that.
It seems like a very eclectic taste of music, which I really respect because I have to be honest, I'm a little bit stuck in like oldies and the music I grew up with. And so you find these new songs, and if you follow Jack on Twitter, X, which you should, at Jack Curry, yes, you'll see that about 4 minutes before every pregame show, he tweets out, it's 4 minutes till the show. It's the perfect amount of time to listen to blank. And he will list some song that you may not have heard of, but will turn out to be like a darn good song. How do you find this new stuff? Is it your nephew? And who does this for you?
Well, my nephew would be on that list. My brother would definitely be on that list, but from years ago. I grew up with my brother Rob. He's 2 years older than me. He knows more about music than I do. So he is constantly texting me new bands that he has heard of. There are sports writer buddies of mine that I trade music back and forth with. And also, it takes me about an hour to drive to the Yes Network studio. So that's 2 hours in the car every day. And I listen to music and I bounce around on Sirius XM, Alt Nation, Sirius XMU. I'll go to the Bob Marley station. I'll even go to some of the hip hop stations, and I just want to hear music that is new. Bob Lorenz, my partner, the person I work with the most closely at Yes, he's always sending me songs, and we go back and forth. So I just want to be a sponge with music. And what you said earlier makes me laugh because a really good friend of mine, I'll say his name, Dave Waldstein. He's at the New York Times, and to me, we've been to a bunch of concerts together. But a few years ago, I recommended a band to him, and he said, "How do you keep up with this?" He said, "I haven't heard a new song that I like in 20 years, and you're not only telling me the song, you're telling me the band, you're telling me where they're from." And I guess, like I said, that's my hobby. I love baseball, and I'll watch every baseball game when I get home from work and check out the West Coast games. But I'll also just take a break and say I'm going to put my headphones on now, and I'm just going to listen to music for a while because that's enjoyable to me and that's soothing to me.
It's always something edgy and new. Last week you had Into Action by Tim Armstrong of Rancid. That's a good song. I listened to it. I was like, I've never heard of this. I have no idea how he found it, but this is a darn good song.
So there's a story about that song. First of all, I love the band Rancid, and if you have never listened to Rancid, they're a punk rock band, and I grew up loving the Clash. So anyone that reminds me of the Clash, I like. Tim Armstrong, his band Rancid, by the way, one of the guys in that band is a really big fan of the A's. I guess they're the Sacramento A's now. But Pamela, my wife, used to work for basically the company that makes Lysol products, and she was a sales trainer, and she had to present to sometimes hundreds of people. She always wanted a song at the beginning of her presentation to sort of get the people inspired for that day's activities. And she used the Into Action song after she heard it. And I said, "You realize some of your colleagues are never going to have heard of this band?" Or she said, "No, this is perfect." And it's short. I think it's only about 3.5 minutes, maybe less. And you're right. It gets it going. So she used that song a lot for her Lysol presentations.
That's great. That's great. So, if we dig up your old high school yearbook photo, are you going to be have like a hairdo like Joey Ramone or
I
something, dressed up
probably
like
had
the Cure?
the Bono mullet going. Yeah, the U2 definitely really long up top and definitely long in the back. And then if you dug up photos post college, you might be surprised. I might have been more advanced in the mullet than Bono was.
Well, it's funny because I saw John Heyman asked you to tweet out, was it a hard day's night or something like that?
He said,
And I
"I've never heard of any of these songs. How about the Beatles or Billy Joel?" So the next day, I gave John, who I've known for over 30 years, I gave him a hard day's night, which I have used before because if you lose on a Friday night and it's extra innings, then the next day you have to come back and play again. I have used a hard day's night. But what was kind of funny about that too, Kelly, is there were a couple people on social media who thought that John and I really were clashing over this. It was very lighthearted. We were just having some fun. But yeah, it's a fun little diversion for me.
And I have to say, there must be another diversion for you. We haven't discussed it directly, but we met down at the winter meetings. And let me just tell all my listeners and viewers that Jack's in sick shape. And so you must have like some really kind of badass workout regimen.
I've run a couple of marathons, so running is my passion, Kelly. I wish I could tell you that I could go out and run a marathon right now, but the last one I did was in 2008. My knees don't want me to do that anymore. I I run, I swim, and once in a while I'll throw some weights around in the garage. It's not even at a gym. I like to do my own little thing. Somebody like John Flaherty, who I work with, that guy puts on a show because I know he goes to the gym 6 days a week and he's out doing cardio when he's not doing that. And Bob Lorenz and I will be ordering pizza, and there's Flash eating grass-fed beef and green beans. And then his snack will be almonds or some dark chocolate. And I'll say, oh man, I got to go run 4 miles tomorrow, but I'm going to have the chicken parm after all. But yeah, I think in this business, you have to remind yourself to try and do your best to stay in some kind of shape because there are going to be days where you don't get to choose your food if you're at the ballpark or even at sometimes we'll have a rain delay and hey, it's pizza. Here you go, eat the pizza. So but the running is important for me because I do a lot of thinking when I run. And if you will allow me this, I ran the New York City Marathon in 2004. I had never run more than 3 miles at a clip.
Are you kidding me?
I hadn't. But here's what was coming up. My mother passed away in October of 94. And in my mind, I had to acknowledge that passing, that 10-year anniversary in some way. So I trained for a marathon, and what I did during the training was not that I didn't think about her every day of my life anyway, but it was a lot of solitude with just me talking to my mom during the training. And then I went out and ran that marathon, and that was my hook. So that's 30 years ago. I've been a runner ever since then. But that first marathon was really a tribute to my mom. I ran with her nickname across my shirt, and that she's been with me ever since.
That's amazing. What a wonderful way to connect and to remember her, and also to have a goal to finish because there was no way you weren't finishing that marathon.
I hurt my calf about 3 weeks before the marathon, and I said, "Oh my gosh, no way." So as I'm talking to you now, I have a picture in my office of me running, and I do have the right calf wrapped pretty heavily. And my mom was she was a boss. She was in charge, so her nickname was Chief. So across my t-shirt, I had Chief written on or had stenciled on it. What was funny, Kelly, is I think everybody and their brother thought I was a police chief or fire chief. And so anytime anyone yelled chief, I just waved back. But yeah, finishing is a big deal. I tell people I'm proud that I did 2 marathons. I was a marathoner for 2 days of my life, but you're a marathoner for the rest of your life. If you can do that 26 miles, if you can get it done on that one day, you get to say you're a marathoner for the rest of your life.
I ran New York, I think in 99, and I did that thing where I put Kelly on my sweatshirt. And at the beginning, it was great because I was hot dogging it, the way you do at mile 2. And everyone's like, Yay, Kelly. And I was like, Yay, me. And then, you get to mile 19 and people are like, Come on, Kelly. And you're just like, you want to swear at them, like, Leave me alone. You get out here and run this stupid race. I mean, all you want to do is crawl into a hole, but everybody knows your name.
Did you did you do any others beyond that, or was New York your one?
I've done 4, and,
Wow.
I put a cap
Nice.
on it. There's a bow on the marathons.
Four, I'm impressed because after I did one, and congrats on four. After I did one, I said I've got to do a second one so that people can't just think I did one. But after the second one, it was okay. I've done it now. I've proven it. But to your mile 19 point, I remember in New York getting to mile 20, which is Upper Manhattan, the Bronx, and a gentleman who I think probably thought he was doing people a favor held up a sign and it said, "You only have a 10K to go." And when I thought about that, I said, "Oh my gosh, this guy just killed me. 6.2 miles to go. I didn't need that. I just wanted to shuffle my way through the rest of it." And the other funny thing that happened is you get towards Central Park, and I was gassed, as I'm sure most people are who aren't elite runners. And there was a race volunteer, and I said, "How much is left?" And I wanted this person to be specific. I wanted him to say a third of a mile, a quarter mile. I would even accept it half a mile. And he said, "Less than a mile." No, no, I know that.
It's
Could
not
you
good
be more,
enough.
could you be more specific? How did you, not that this is what you wanted to talk about. I also, my toenails did not fare well after the first race. I should have worn a half a size larger. I didn't heed that advice. I lost 3 toenails, and that is a painful experience.
I didn't know we were getting into toenails, but yes, for our listeners, know that toenails are not good looking after a marathon.
Yeah, that was rough. That was a painful. Thankfully, they grew back, and I got smarter for marathon two and went half a size up.
So, Jack, when I look at you and look at your body of work and meet you and talk to you, one word that comes to mind is the word discipline. You are an extremely disciplined person about your work, your appearance. You always look like $1,000,000 when you're dressed up on the Yes Network. Your hair always looks good. Your work's good. Your work ethic is good. So, for the love of God, can you please tell me one thing about your life that is in utter disarray? This is what I really want to know about you. I mean,
Well,
it could be like a drawer that's full of old phone chargers or anything.
thank you for saying all that. But right, if Pamela, my wife, were listening to that question right now, she would be laughing because I am a clutter king. I absolutely office, desk drawers, closets. I have 2 file cabinets in our garage that are filled. I have every article that I ever wrote for the New York Times.
No
So
kidding.
on one hand, that's a really cool thing to have. On another hand, I think, where is all that going? What am I doing with that? Because if I really needed to know what did I write about the Yankees in 2004, now I just go to the archives online. So yeah, and I have a hard time throwing things out. I don't want to call myself a hoarder, but I hang on to a lot of things. So in terms of discipline, I guess I'm a disciplined clutter king because I hang on to probably way more things than I need to have.
Wow, I got to say, I'm really surprised. I would not have pegged that. So thank you.
Maybe I'll get better. I've tried to streamline. I do know that there is even even Kelly these notebooks. I mean, I have notebooks back from when I was a Yankee beat writer in the mid to early 90s. Why I think I still need these? Do I need that Melito Perez quote from after a start in 1993? Probably not, but I hang on to a lot of that stuff.
Maybe they'll be in Cooperstown one day.
I don't know. I said to Pamela recently, I wonder if I could ever convince my high school to take all of this stuff. Here, I'll pay you if you just stick this in a room somewhere and maybe somebody wants to look at it someday.
Well, I want to stick generically to the timeline I've given you. So, we are going to enter the rapid fire portion of this podcast, which I totally didn't warn you about. But here we go.
Love
There are
it.
no wrong answers, and we got about 10 questions here. Are you ready?
I'm ready to go.
Your cheat food downfall, salty or sweet?
Sweet. Do
And
you want me to elaborate or short answers?
short answers.
Okay, sweet chocolate chip cookies. Yeah, 100%.
Really? Okay. I'm a salty girl. Good.
All right.
All right. Dinner at the studio. Did you brown bag it or you're getting takeout?
I'd say 50-50. And Bob and I text about that because we're together so often. If we're trying to be healthy, we bring. If we're trying to be less than healthy, we order out.
Ah, I like it. You kind of plan together. You kind of
Yes.
keep each other strong on the brown bag
Yes.
days. I think I know the answer to this one now. Another marathon in you, yes or no?
I would love to say yes. Unfortunately, the answer is no. I think if I did it, it would probably end my running career, and I like running too much to do that. So I run about 4 or 5 days a week, but I keep the mileage kind of short.
I'm with you on the no.
Yeah, it beats you up, unfortunately. I applaud those who are still going in their 70s and 80s and they're running marathons. Man, their bodies are something that my body is not.
100%. I'll get up on that early morning in November and watch them on TV. It'll be
Yes.
great.
Yes.
All right, three squares, snacker, or intermittent faster?
That's a great question. I would say probably closer to three squares, but I also snack. I am not a happy person when I'm hungry, so I always make sure that I have something around, an apple, a banana, pack of yogurt for work, but I definitely eat 3 meals a day. I'm not a happy person if I'm hungry. And I can't eat before the show. West Coast games are, well, I will eat before a West Coast game, but for instance, the Yankees are playing St. Louis tonight. Our pregame is 7:30. So that we won't eat something till 8:15. I don't really like eating that late, but I will wait till after the pregame is over to eat something.
Yeah, I get that. On the Yankees, facial hair rules or no facial hair rules?
I have to tell you, Kelly, as much attention as this got this season, and even as friends and even players, I would talk to them about this. I was never overly passionate with an opinion on this. I thought they always thought the Yankees looked gentlemanly. I always thought the Yankees looked very neat and tidy. But I also have eyes. I also saw Roger Clemens, Andy Pettitte, CC Sabathia, many a start go to the mound where they clearly hadn't shaved in a few days. And so the facial hair policy to me, while though it was enforced, I saw people skirt that line. I also remember covering the Don Mattingly hair saga, which I think was 91 or 92, where he got benched because he didn't trim a little bit off the back of his hair. And I remember when you were at the New York Times, you're writing very serious copy. I remember even writing that as a young age, being 27, 28, whatever I was, and saying, I mean, this is comical. They're benching one of their best players because he didn't get a haircut. I mean, what are we doing here? And then I got along really well with Stick Michael, and he subsequently told me that there was miscommunication between he and Stump Merrill because he called Stump and said, these four guys got to get haircuts. And Stump said, well, what if they don't? Well, then they can't play. Stick didn't said he didn't mean in the moment. He didn't mean basically give them a warning, let them anyway. So I didn't get crazy over the grooming policy. I will say this: I thought because it was passed down from George that it would remain because I know how much the Steinbrenner family clings to what George believed was important for the Yankees. But I also appreciated Hal Steinbrenner's explanation in terms of it was probably overdue. It was probably time for a change. I know that wasn't a short answer, and I apologize, but it probably had a lot to impart there.
If you could swap talents, you a ball player or a musician?
Ball player. Oh
Oh, that
my gosh.
surprised me. Okay.
Ball player. Kelly, I probably peaked too soon. There were three MVPs in our little league, and I was one of them. Shout out to Joe Galasso and Cliff Crolius.
Joe Galasso and Chris Crowley. Yeah.
And I like so many kids, I'm sure I wanted to be a baseball player. I really tried to put the work in. Then you get to the next levels, and it's Babe Ruth, and it's high school, and you start to look around you. And I went to an all boys high school in Jersey City, and it was competitive. There were some really good athletes. So I would say probably by about the time I was 16 or 17, I knew journalism was going to be my path. But if you gave me the opportunity to play shortstop or center field at Yankee Stadium, or you said I could stand in front of a microphone at Madison Square Garden, it's not even close. I absolutely baseball. I'd want the front row seat at Madison Square Garden to watch someone else perform, but yeah, I'd want to be a baseball player.
Like the answer. And this is my last rapid fire that really hasn't been all that rapid, but Mick Jones, should he stay or should he go?
He's, you have to stay. You want, if he goes, we don't hear him perform. You absolutely have to stay.
If he goes, it will be trouble.
That's right.
All right, Jack, you have been a great sport. So we close every show here at the 3 inning fan with a very important question, which is what's good to eat while watching the ball game? Jack Curry, what's good to eat while watching the ball game?
So am I at a ball game or I'm working, for instance, at the studio or Yankee Stadium?
You get to pick.
So if I'm at a ball game, I'm pretty simple. I would go back to what I was as a kid. I'm just looking for a hot dog. I think of going to a game. I think of hot dogs. Now, this day and age, you go to a baseball game and the choices are much more advanced. So if I was at Yankee Stadium, I'm sure I'd be lining up for a steak sandwich because Lobel's, those steak sandwiches are terrific. If I'm watching the game with Bob Lorenz I've got a workout in, so I feel like I have some calories to play with, I'm getting chicken parm, and I'm enjoying that, and that's taking me all through however many innings we have to cover.
So do you get like takeout in at the studio for dinner?
We do. And fortunately, where we're located in Connecticut, there are some good places that we become really fond of, and we know what works off their menu and what doesn't work. And Bob Lorenz is a wonderful teammate for a million reasons. He's also a great teammate because he takes your order, he places your order, he runs downstairs to pick it up. All of a sudden, you see what everybody ordered, and then there's an extra pizza off to the side. There's a couple of Todd Frazier has been in the studio with us a bunch this year, and he likes mozzarella sticks. So all of a sudden, Bob's ordering a couple of extra orders of those. So yeah, we have a good time and work with a great group of people.
Sounds really fun. And this show has been really fun, Jack. I can't believe how much time you gave us. Thank you so much for being with me today.
I love the conversation, Kelly, and I know you told me and we talked about your podcast back at the winter meetings, and I'm really thrilled that I got a chance to be one of your guests. So best of luck with everything going forward.
Thanks so much, Jack. And thank you, all listeners, for being with us here today. And we'll be back again next week with another show. See you then.